I do get excited every time I hear you guys talk about continuous improvement. So that seems to be in the vocabulary the last few days, and by both the speakers that you have coming in, presenters, and the discussions that you're having. So that gets me really excited to hear about that. So when we've had some classes with your organization, and a number of you have learned problem-solving methodology. And so we've got a great start. We've got some good skills being built. And I know you're thinking about how you can reduce non-value added activities all the time. What I wanted to talk about today, it's in order to have a sustainable continuous improvement system, we have to build that. And learning and education and training and all that is very, very important, but there are many other things that we need to have in place so that that whole system is sustainable long term. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And then I just sent you a link that I'm crossing my fingers is the link to an assessment that we're going to have you fill out in the last half of my hour talk. So get ready for that, and hopefully that link works. So how do we build a continuous improvement ecosystem? We're going to talk about what our objectives are, then just a quick review on operational excellence, ecosystem discussion, continuous improvement ecosystem and what that looks like, and then the assessment and wrap up. And I realize I'm right before lunch, so I'm guessing we'll keep the session moving so you can get to lunch. We want to learn the elements in a continuous improvement ecosystem that are necessary to develop, nurture, and sustain that continuous improvement culture that you are trying to enhance and develop. Understand the components that make up each element to create a sustainable CI culture. And then we'll use a simple tool to assess your organization's CI ecosystem. Now, you may have seen this slide a number of times. Repetition has always been helpful for me in the past for learning and remembering and kind of triggering my thoughts about anything really. So this is my favorite operational excellence diagram. I did not create it. It comes from industry. And what it shows us is that continuous improvement is the foundation for getting to operational excellence. So, and whenever we construct a building, we start with a foundation. And that foundation needs to be solid. It needs to be on solid ground. It needs to be very strong to hold up the rest of the building as we progress. So I just want you to relate that in that way, that continuous improvement and the things that you're learning about problem solving, so that the tools and the methods that help you continuously improve are so important to the overall strategy of operational excellence. In addition to continuous improvement, then there's 4 pillars that hold up the roof of operational excellence. And these things are very necessary as well. And you can get a good idea of what those pillars are just by looking at this. Leadership and team building, the way that we lead the people in our organizations is very important to achieving operational excellence. Do we have change management systems in place so that when we do make improvements, those improvements are sustainable, and we have a way of helping everyone move to the new way of doing things? How do we control our processes reducing the variability in those processes, and then just having that excellence mindset. And I see that developing so quickly, is having that excellence mindset and thinking about what can I do better. And as we would have it, the next slide is about mindset. And I've heard this comment a number of times as well during your operational meeting. Change starts from the inside. If you want your outside life to change, you first have to start with your mindset. Start learning how to learn, form new habits, learn new skills, and stop repeating what's not working. A famous quote from Albert Einstein. And it is all, it does start with mindset. So that's our first hurdle. Ecosystems. We hear a lot about ecosystems today, especially with our climate changing environment and what that's doing to our environment. You probably learned about ecosystems maybe in grade 2, somewhere along in there in science. And always a favorite, I think, when kids learn about ecosystems and how they work. But I want to just use this as a comparison to an ecosystem for continuous improvement. In a natural ecosystem, there are living things and there are things that are not living. And those living things interact with each other, and they interact with their non-living environments, like weather, earth, sun, soil, climate, and atmosphere. Ecosystems are the foundation of the biosphere, and they determine the health of the entire Earth system. So the same with continuous improvement. Ecosystem is going to determine the environment of your health of your organization. So we have in an ecosystem a community or a group of organisms that live in and interact with each other. And everything, the physical and the living components are all linked together. And we must have a favorable environment to keep this ecosystem balanced and healthy. And that ecosystem also must change and evolve as the climate changes or the resources change. So how can we make our system adaptable? So what is the purpose of a continuous improvement ecosystem? And that is, it is to create and sustain a shared value system that promotes a customer-centric environment and improvement culture, where all are focused on increasing value delivered to customers. And I've also heard a number of times talking about who your customer is, and as specifically talking about the breeder as being the customer of operations. So I'm very happy and excited to hear about your mindset and your thought process and about identifying those customer needs. This is where we want to go. The continuous improvement ecosystem is healthy, adaptable, and sustainable for the long-term growth of your organization. That's our desired state. We want to take a long-term view. This doesn't happen overnight. We don't make all these changes and improvements overnight. Things didn't get the way they are today overnight, and it's not likely that they're going to all change and improve overnight. So take a long-term view. It takes a lot of perseverance, takes a lot of patience, but just keep moving. And just the quote of Joseph Paris on how he views operational excellence, which is what we're all striving for. It's a state of readiness attained as the efforts through the enterprise reach a state of alignment for pursuing its strategies, where the culture is committed to the continual and deliberate improvement of organizational performance and the circumstances of those who work there, and is a precursor to becoming a high-performance organization. So where the culture is committed, and we're also committed to the people who work there. And operational excellence is fueled by continuous improvement. So what have we been doing and where are we going? So we're working, we kind of start out as teaching the Lean Practitioner course, where you have a project, as you have a real project where you can make a real difference. And so we've been working and learning through the project teams. And that's a great place to start, as we have the support of leadership and a commitment from leadership to start the process there. Then we want to expand the knowledge. We want to create and implement a continuous improvement employee development plan. So how can we get our entire organization to at least have some base knowledge of some of the tools and methods and things that we use to solve problems? If they do, that they can help solve their own problems and work with their teammates to solve some of the larger problems. We want to engage employees in practicing principles and concepts through their daily improvement and larger projects. So the more people you have in your organization with the mindset and the access and have learned the tools and the methods and the concepts, the faster you will be able to change. And the more engaged your employees will be, and the faster you will get to that culture. And then, we're always collaborating with leadership. What is leadership's role to support this cultural change and needed to sustain continuous improvement? So it takes a while, and we just have to, keep moving. So when we are working on this assessment a little bit later, you're going to be able to see some areas and some strategies that you may want to work on in the next year to the next 2 to 3 years. So this is our ecosystem, continuous improvement ecosystem. The customer's in the middle, a customer-centric system. And there are 6 major elements. And actually, we're going to get into some detail on this in the next few slides. But each one of these elements, it's very important that we have many activities, initiatives, practices, if you will, going on in each one of these elements to keep that system balanced and healthy. So that when we're looking at the assessment, it's based off of these 6 elements and the practices that need to be present for each one of those elements to be at their optimum. So let's just dig in real quick to that. So our first element is philosophy and mindset. And what are the components of that element? So I'm not going to read each one of these elements, components in this element, but you get the idea of what that is by just looking at a few of them. Demonstrate a respect for our people, everybody, every day. Focus on adding value to the customer. The continuous improvement mindset is considered in the hiring process. The customer defines a value. So of all those components, if we look at those components, and you're going to be rating yourself in the assessment. And don't worry, it's a very simple assessment, but you're going to be actually rating each one of these components. And what that's going to do is it's going to help you decide where you want to go next, what do you want to work on next. And so in addition to the components to each one of these elements, on each one of these upcoming slides, I have potential actions. So in the green box, the actions are a strategy that you might consider for the next coming year. And so pull out where you think you need to do some work. Everybody, every day might possibly be what you choose. So what am I going to do this year to include everybody every day? Well, I'm going to implement daily huddles, which is a communication tool and a stand-up meeting. So this is what we're going to do this year to make sure everyone is engaged. We're going to have a standard agenda. We're going to discuss quality issues and potential solutions. We're going to experiment, try out those suggestions, report those daily improvements, and make changes to train on standard work. So an objective. So that's kind of how I would like to see you use this continuous improvement ecosystem, is to understand where you are in what each one of these elements, and then what you can do to strengthen each one of those elements. So next we have principles and concepts. And the components of that are quality tools, root cause analysis. You guys are getting very good at that. Mapping the process. And the things that I highlighted that I have in bold print are things that I went through and I said, okay, this next year, I want to work on mapping my process and standard work. So how do I turn that into a strategy? I want to map and document current processes. I want to select a couple of areas so that you don't want to get too overwhelmed. Don't try to do it all at the same time. Do it step by step. And then on standard work, maybe you've decided that you want to implement 5S in some particular department or functional area, such as accounting or such as your farms, but make a plan for improvement. People leadership element. What does that mean? The components of that. Active and visible leadership. What does that look like? Belief that people want to do a good job. Create a learning organization. Do you have a recognition system? How do barriers get removed? All of these components go into this people leadership system. What actions will I take this year? Well, I've identified I need to strengthen my active and visible leadership. So I'm going to work on my communication system. And we're going to have possibly a monthly meeting for teams to present improvements. Leadership teaches a tool, record and share these things globally. This kind of gives you a map on how to do this. Leader standard work is our next element. What goes into leader standard work? Leaders are responsible for mission, vision, and values, setting those. For the strategy deployment system, what are our strategies going forward? And how are we going to track our improvement results? Daily management systems. This ties back to our other element where we talked about everybody every day. So all of these elements and these components are working together, they're interacting, and things are linked together and interdependent, just like a natural environment ecosystem would be. So here we've chosen as something to work on, improvement plan aligned with KPIs as our area to work on. And what we're going to do is we're going to implement some visual management to track our metrics versus our goals and our standards. Okay. Next, we have employee development. Things that go into that element: access to learning opportunities, basic CI skills for everyone. CI knowledge is on the jobs skills matrix. So you've included continuous improvement is not something that we do outside or an addition, add on to our work. It's how we do our work. So it becomes part of that job skills matrix when you're defining what kind of abilities employees need to have to do certain types of roles. Employee engagement, experiential learning. When we experience things such as we do in our problem-solving class, we figure out how they work. We are more engaged because we're actually making the changes ourselves. So how can we help everybody in an organization experience the learning and be able to make the changes they need to make? So we've chosen CI skills for everyone. How are we going to do that? Training more practitioners, training the trainer so that they can spread the good news, spread the knowledge. Projects in practice. This is like our non-living organisms, I guess, in your environment. We need to have some of these things in place. 5S work organization is in place. We have coaches and facilitators. Everyone, every day again. What are the results? What are the metrics? How do all the metrics align with the KPIs? So we're going to work on CI coaches and facilitators. And this is all what I'm presenting here is not necessarily what your forward plan is, okay? This is just hypothetical. So I think I better mention that. I'm not setting out your plan for you. We're going to be discussing that later and what your ideas are for improvement. So these are just ideas of how you might use and link together the elements, the components in those elements, and how that turns into potential actions. So those are all of the elements that need to stay healthy. And you can see there's lots of components. So there's lots of opportunity. And you want to keep that all in balance. I would promote having some strategies in each one of those elements every year so that you know that you're working on all of it and we don't get out of balance. If you have all of those things in place, then your system going forward is going to be healthy and sustainable. So now it's time for our assessment. And so these are I'm breaking this into 3 different areas as far as your progress on implementing and having a healthy ecosystem for continuous improvement. Okay. So if the total score came up to somewhere between 0 and 37, you might interpret that as your CI culture is fragile or in the beginning stages. And I would recommend formulating 1 to 3 initiatives in each of the 6 elements that you can implement quickly. Also, communicate the initiatives to the entire organization and ask for everyone to get involved, and map out additional initiatives in each element and implement them within the next 12 to 18 months. And then assess your progress and continue to relaunch your strategy. So this happens in organizations frequently. Unfortunately, it does. But they'll attempt a lean transformation or continuous improvement transformation, and they don't have all the elements in place and all the practices in place to support the system, so that it fails. In fact, some industry numbers say that about 69% of some of these efforts fail. So you may be in a relaunching mode if you have a lower score. If your score is between 38 to 62, I would say your CI culture is on track. If your CI is less than 4 years old. So keep doing what you're doing and make sure that you add and balance the initiatives across all elements to ensure sustainability. Look for gaps in elements and develop initiatives to close them. Keep a long-term view and measure your progress. If you have been developing a CI culture for many years and you have this score, think about what is holding you back from a higher score. So there's some barrier, mix it up, shake it up. You may need to relaunch your CI strategy to create excitement and change, or you may need to change your approach in a specific element, and then, reassess your results. If your score is between 63 and 88, your organization is well on its way to sustaining the CI culture for the long term. So continue to assess your ecosystem and focus on areas that need to be strengthened. Look for trends and gaps. Have some initiatives failed in some other elements? What can you learn from this? One element weaker than the others? And these are just some things to focus on. So we're going to look at our scores and see where everybody, we had 12 responses that we were evaluating. Just a second here. Okay, graphically. So those three categories I just described, first one is number 1, the second one is number 2, and the last one is number 3. So most of the responses fell into category 2, and your CI program is less than 4 years old. And so I would say, things are headed in the right direction. And the people that took this assessment today, this is what their opinion is of where the practices are. And this is a distribution of those surveys. So we had one with a total of about 32 points, all the way up to probably 73, score of 73. So quite a range here. But this gives you something to talk about, doesn't it? If you use this assessment with your team, then everybody could sit down and talk about, you could look at the distribution and scores and what's causing that. Why do certain people feel that way? Now, to get a really robust discussion going, you're going to have a high level of trust among your team, right? So that people feel comfortable voicing their opinions and how they see things differently. So then we broke this down into elements, those 6 elements that you see here as far as scores go. And you can see that we definitely have a range, and we have some areas, philosophy and mindset, principles and concepts, and then down here in practices and projects, where the scores tend to be lower. So those may be some areas where you want to look at and come up with some ideas and practices and strategies, things that you want to implement there to strengthen the system. Also, please look at what you're doing well. What's going well in this area of leaders' standard work. What do we want to do more of, possibly, if things are going well and having good success? Can we do more of that to even strengthen that even more? And our average score was 52. That puts you in the middle category. So just real quickly on philosophy and mindset, and I'd like to ask you about this, I guess. As far as the components that make up philosophy and mindset are here on the left. And then I had given an example of an action that might be taken, but from you participating today, knowing that this is an area that was scored a little bit lower, do you have some ideas of some actions that you might take, or maybe one action that you might take in the next year that might help strengthen this area? Any ideas from the audience?
When you look at the components, we have taken in a lot. We need to go back to our respective locations and start the process of implementation, like everybody, every day.
Okay.
We need to call our teams together. We need to start changing the orientation. Look, this is the new outlook. We need to do things differently. We need to start looking out for the same thing. And when you communicate the new standards, actually it's not a new standard, but we've been sloppy. We need to start looking at it collectively, not from the leadership point of view alone. I know there are different adopter categories. Some are quick at adopting. Some other people will not find a reason. We will have to find a way of getting everybody to join the team and to do things correctly. That's my take.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Good comments. So in the interest of time, although you may have more ideas, let's go on to the principles and concepts. That was also an area of that scored a little bit lower. Any ideas from these components, what you might make an effort to do in the next few months or the next year? An area where you think would add a lot of value and be beneficial as a more of a foundational step in this area. Any comment?
Well,
Maybe not. And just this tool is this assessment and the information you can gain from it. Excellent to use to sit down and discuss things then and set your strategies, set your goals from it. It is not an end all, of course. You have lots of other inputs coming into what your operations strategies are, but this is, one helpful tool that can help get you there faster by helping to point you in the direction that everyone feels you need to go. So, and then projects in practice, actually the score here was the lowest, and so more.
Sorry,
of
Teresa, are you showing
Yes.
the data? Because so far we're seeing the presentation again.
what we had done
Oh, okay.
was
Okay, yeah, I get what you're doing. All right, sorry.
right. We're linking the data that showed that the elements that scored the lowest, we're linking that back to the components and working on trying to get you to come up with some strategies that would improve the score, if you will, in that element. So anybody have any comments that they'd like to make in projects and practice components and where you think your organization would benefit in the next 12 months, stressing any of these particular components?
We're not having.
Okay.
So Teresa,
Yes.
We
Gustavo,
did get some feedback before on the issue of having training of trainers, and
Yep.
so that's one of the ideas that was portrayed here and was commented upon.
And Teresa, the groups you represent the continuous improvement project now. So you will see a lot of these items included in the projects, right? So with examples that's already ongoing.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. That's the results from our little assessment, and you could see how quick that was and how meaningful that information and useful that information can be to your group. It's a tool to help you.
So Teresa, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Gustavo, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So the what just to help too is the results here was of course summary, and it is not really representative, and also has some because it also joined people from results from people from EiB-IITA, Africa Rise, SARI, so different institutions, different realities, so that also maybe does not reflect exactly the reality, and we couldn't do that level of analysis to separate that, but at least shows the survey and the methodology that you can use to know where to improve or where to put more attention. And I think that this is something that maybe you will see more in the future with maybe you can use that. We will soon post that in our toolbox, whatever. You can go in your institution and you can use these with your team, with your your leadership team can ask more participation from others to, and of course we are here to help too. Anyway, yeah. So thanks, Teresa. Good work. Bye.